Welcome back to another Racer X Roundtable. My name is Donnie Southers. I am joined, of course, by Kellen Brauer, Matt Rice, Jason Weigandt, and Mitch Kendra. In this one, we are going to be talking Loretta's. So, like many of you out there, I was not there, but these four gentlemen were. So they're going to give us a lot of the sights and sounds from on location. So first, the biggest topic, of course, was the weather. If it's not Loretta's without a little bit of inclement weather. So from the floor, Matt, I know you were down with Tom. You were down in the mud. How bad was the mud, though, really?
It was pretty bad. Uh, I haven't been to Loretta's in a couple years. The last time that I saw mud like this was probably, I can't remember which year it was. It was 13 or 14. And back then, everything got pushed off into the infield and we basically had a single track to walk. And this time was not so much a single track as much as it was just a lake of mud. So that was pretty much our infield was trudging.
And Kellen, you were up in the booth. What was there a little bit of safety up there, or did it really not matter?
Yeah, I mean, we were out of the rain, so that side of it was good. And, it just all 3 days that it rained, I felt like it came upon us so fast and like almost unexpected. Like you could see the clouds overhead, and then suddenly it's just dark, like really, really dark. So much so that we were calling a moto, I think it was on Saturday morning, and you could not see to Storyland because it was that dark from our tower, which normally during the week we could see across the track and at least see it over there. But it was just like dark shade. And then obviously we had some of the thunder on some of the day with the lightning, and it just like kind of it was all a lot more worse, I think, than anyone expected. You see the weather on the forecast coming into the week, and you're like, okay, Thursday, we're maybe going to get some rain. Oh, maybe we'll get Friday rain. And then to be raining as long as it did Thursday, as much as it did Friday, and then again get us again on Saturday, you're just like, is it ever going to stop? It just kept coming and hitting us. It was pretty remarkable to see.
So, Weege, obviously you were kind of between the booth and the floor, but Mitch, where were you at during most of the week?
Yeah, so I just sat this one out. I was at home watching the Racer TV broadcast, and it's kind of funny. Kellen mentioned about darkness. I think, Tom, Matt, Kellen, Weege, all guys are sending us updates from the track. And I think one of Tom's updates were it's so difficult to film right now because it is so dark. And it's just like, I mean, obviously you guys know for watching the Racer TV broadcast at home, like I'm sitting there and it's, the first delay, it's like, all right, we're going to check back in an hour. And I thought I was watching a GIF, it was a live stream, but it looked like it was a GIF. It was just raining, just continuous rain. It was like, is this like live? And then somebody would walk across the track. You're like, oh, it's live. Okay. But it literally just looked like a GIF. It was just rain and rain and rain. And like Helen said, and Matt said, it just eventually was going to add up and made it difficult. But yeah, so I was watching from home, trying to tweet out some stuff just to keep people informed. And
so, you're obviously much more involved in just about everything about this sport. So I'm sure you were all over the place, up in the tower, down on the floor. How bad was it?
Yeah, well, the worst case scenario on Thursday was that they had run one moto. They had done a 65 moto, which was just enough to churn up the track a little bit. And then it rained. I think we were out from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. before they finally got it back. And I'm trying to be old school like everybody else. I'm saying, what's the big deal? We've raced motocross in the rain for 50 years. What's the problem here? And then it rained again Friday morning, but luckily then they knew the rain was coming and we didn't do a first moto on Friday. So then the track was sealed. So if you look at the motos at the end of the day, Thursday, they were still pretty bad. At the end of the day, Friday, they were shockingly good. And that's the difference between one moto, track gets churned up, then it rains, and then Friday where they didn't race at all. But those delays, I think it was a total of 13 hours. I think 8 hours on Thursday, and we lost 5 hours on Friday. And then Saturday, they were doing a lot of track maintenance. And I'm like, dude, what are you saving the track for at this point? It's the last day of racing. It doesn't matter. So I think we were all getting frustrated and snickering behind the track crew's back, either in staging or in the announcer's tower. So I finally asked the guys, Jeff Russell and Randy Poulter, I'm like, why are you doing so much track maintenance? We have to get these motos in. But their whole theory was, if the track fully went away, it would take so much time to fix it and have it even be passable, especially for little bikes, that they would have lost more time than they would have gained by not doing the maintenance, especially on the final day. They had a really smart idea. There's normally a parade lap before every moto, and they decided to just have everyone gets a sight lap 6:30 in the morning on Saturday, and then we're just running motos back to back to back, kind of like at your local track. Last place guy is close to the finish, 2 card goes up. They're like, if the last place guy gets stuck in all these motos, we're going to lose 5 to 10 minutes of every moto pulling bikes out, and that's going to cost us way more time than more track maintenance. So that was the gamble they made. Don't race in the rain. Don't lose the track. Stay on top of it. If we get a 65 moto with 20 bikes stuck, we're going to lose an hour. And I was doubting it the whole time, but dude, lo and behold, they didn't think they'd get the 50 motos in, and they even got them in on Saturday. So they nailed it like to the minute. As far as what was going on behind the scenes, when they said they were only going to run 250 motos, that led to this insurgency, like the Capitol at the Washington, D.C. of 50 parents. What was that? Was that Thursday or was that Friday? I don't even remember. Which day was that, Kellen? I think it was Thursday.
I think it was. I think it was Friday because we hadn't even ran the second 50 motos by that point.
That's right.
And so they're like, okay, we got to get at least the second motos done, but we're not going to have time to do anything after that.
Yes, that's right. They were going to have 50s at the end of the day Friday and be like, you're done. We only got 2 of your motos in. 50 parents weren't having it. We all know 50 parents are very emotional. But I give credit. This impromptu thing led to a meeting in front of the MX Sports office that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And they all kind of worked together to come up with some good solutions. Hey, let's cut the parade laps out. They asked, hey, 50 parents, do you even want a sight lap? And everyone that's got the electric bike, they're saving battery. They're like, none of us are going to do a sight lap anyway. Just get rid of it. So it led to some smart decisions and compromises. They still said, look, we still might not get your third moto in Saturday. And if we don't, that means whoever was the championship leader at the end of the second moto isn't going to get his number 1 plate in the podium. You're going to miss all that if we don't get that moto in. Are you willing to take that chance? And they said yes. They barely got it in, but it was quite the scene for a while.
Yeah, look, and just to echo what you were saying, Weege, about getting all these 65cc kids stuck in the track. I think it was the 6th moto of the day on Saturday. The rain had started coming down the moto before that. And then the 65cc 7 to 9 limited class went out there. Jaden Smart got this crazy hole shot from the outside. And then like lap 2, there was a lot of guys stuck. There's a lot of guys pushing their bikes off the track. And, you know, eventually they were able to get people out there and move and get the riders off the track. But it had only been raining for like 20 minutes at that point. Imagine sending those same kids, that same class out there, which they would have another race later that day after it had been raining for hours. You have nothing but puddles and water next to the side of the track. So I think that they probably even saw that moto and saw what was happening in that situation. And we're like, I think we need to make sure that we keep the track clean because if those kids are going to go back out there again, it's going to be bad.
I knew it was bad. We can talk about not the 50cc, but the 50 plus class. Mike Brown, did he just drown out basically? Is that what happened?
I don't actually know what happened. I knew that he pulled off the side at the commandments. Like Ben Riddle lost a chain in the lead. And then Brownie, just bike issue. Like he just stopped next to the commandment, and then the KTM boys came out there and started pushing him back, and he was walking off dejected, and then started talking to Riddle, who was also walking off dejected, and suddenly Jeff Emick has a 30-second lead, and you're like, what's going on? Just bikes were expiring left and right, and it wasn't just big bikes; it was little bikes. It was everywhere. They were just sucking in water because there's so much standing water on the track.
Yeah, that's my point. So at the end of that moto, this guy from New England won. His name's Shane Kelleher, or they call him Scary Guy in New England. And he's like, I was riding through seat deep water on my 450, and I'm like, oh, how are they going to do 85s and super minis and 65s if the water's so deep that 450s are drowning out? So that's when I realized you can't just keep racing.
So were there any other, obviously other than 50 plus and the kids, were there any other major weather related mechanicals that changed any of the classes, like changed any of the finishing, or was everybody else pretty unscathed?
Well, I'd say Mark finished for sure.
Weather related. There was the typical Loretta's bad luck for dudes, but it's hard to say.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark Finnis had a bike issue, right? He had 2 1-moto finishes, and then I'm not sure exactly what happened to his bike, but
that's right.
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure, I think it was the 85 class that Easton Graves was leading going into the final moto, and then his bike expired when he was in like 3rd or 4th. So there was a few for sure that were like that.
It's funny, we talked about the guys and their bikes getting stuck, but you said some of the parents to keep talking about what they're doing to their bikes before the race starts.
Oh, yeah. So Friday, like I said, the track was actually shockingly good by the end of the day Friday because they didn't race in the morning when it was raining. And the 350 classes, the first three, the electric, 7 to 8, and 4 to 6, like the Cobra class, they were fine. Last moto of the day was the P-dubs, and I've never seen anything like that. They literally got about 10 feet out of the gate, and it was like they hit glue. The bikes just stopped. And these poor kids are just wide open on their 2-horsepower P-dubs, and they're just not moving. I'd never seen anything like it. So then the officials, you're not allowed to have outside assistance from the mechanics or the parents. So it's like 34 bikes, and I don't think there was one official per bike. I don't think there's 34 people working the start. So they're all trying to push. It was unbelievable. Like just hearing 30 P-dubs just going, and no movement. They're not even spinning tires. The tires couldn't turn. And every other start was fine. That's just how much slower a P-dub is. Like even a Cobra could blast through that mud, no problem. So that was crazy. And then we saw that there was a kid riding without boots because his boots got stuck in the mud and he took off and the boots came off, and he's 6 years old. So I guess his instinct is, I'm not going to stop and put the boots back on. I'm going to finish the moto in socks. That P-dub moto on Friday was, I said at the end of the day, Friday, I'm like, I thought I had seen it all until today, but I was wrong, because then on Saturday they had a start. They just drew a chalk line at the end of the start straight so they wouldn't have to go through the start. And I'm like, okay, I'm wrong. Now I've seen it all.
Well, so, I mean, you're saying there's not 34 officials out there that can push the bikes or whatever, but I do want to give credit. There were so many people lining the track in those 50 motos, both Friday and Saturday evening. You know, Davey and Tim Carter were both in the sand section picking bikes up. And I saw, you know, the Cobra guys all around the track as well, trying to help people get going and stuff like that. Like there was a lot of people that just like sacrificed shooting video or sacrificed, you know, waving a flag. Megawatt was standing on a jump at one point. Like there's just people everywhere helping pick these bikes up and go. So it was really like a good team effort to make sure that those kids could get their motos in and not get stuck.
Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of people, the sand sweeper was getting a lot of the 50s and 60s earlier. So I think everybody waited for that and didn't think, I better get to the start just in case they get stuck in glue off the start. So yeah, I think that's true. It was like everyone was waiting and they're like, what? How come they haven't gotten here? Because they're still stuck in the start.
So the 50s and the 50s out of the way, let's get to the thing that most people are more familiar with, the A classes. So obviously we have 250A, we have Open A. A lot of times the 250A is going to be a lot of the younger guys. Open A is going to have the young up and comers and also a few random thrown in Heath Harrison kind of guys in there. So what was the total takeaway results for the big classes? Kellen?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in. I was going to say Weege probably could talk, but yeah, I mean, Bennett walks away with the Horizon Award win, which I think a lot of people probably saw coming into this week. He was really good in Open Pro Sport. He was kind of hit and miss in 250 Pro Sport, which is a little bit weird. He charged way back in the second 250 Pro Sport moto. At one point, he was struggling to make passes in a 250 Pro Sport moto as well. Like just he had guys like Avery Long and others just go by him, and then was sitting in 7th for a long time. So that was a little bit weird. But he was very strong all week. Gavin Towers wins the 250 Pro Sport class. I think it was with 332 scores, so just solid week, and he was coming off a broken collarbone. So I think those are kind of like your two stars more or less of the week. But then you also have to look at like Mark Finnis came from way back and won a moto. And then again, like Avery Long was strong all week. I think Parker Ross got on the podium overall in both of the Pro Sport classes as well. So there's a lot of guys there that like, you know, coming in, yeah, they're great riders, Parker Ross, Mark Finnis, all these guys. But you probably looked more like a Julian Beaumer to beat those guys, and instead they were solid all week long. So yeah, like some guys shined through. Some of the guys we expected to do well were there, but overall, yeah, good racing.
Hey, one thing you guys could probably touch on a little bit more because you were there, but I know some of these guys, like I think Bennett was on a 250F during the Open Pro Sport, and just, you know, there's some of the guys that are on the same bike for both classes versus some guys switch back and forth. So
it's kind of become tradition. It's kind of a cool thing, the Open Pro Sport class. When you're a guy like Bennett, and he's not alone, it happens every year. When you're like the factory dude who's about to enter the 250 class as a pro, you just don't even mess with a 450. So you're just going to race your 250F in both classes. And then you're dealing with, last year it was Cole Martinez. This year was Heath Harrison. You're dealing with some vet guy who's still fast and is on a 450 and is definitely going to beat you off the start. And then you got to catch these dudes. It's a neat, like, little way to add. It's almost like adding an inverted start to the races. The fastest kid is probably not going to get a good start. And can he win anyway?
So do we have a new group of guys coming in for Unadilla? Like you have obviously Dax, who's ran a couple pro. Is Juju going to be making his pro debut now?
Does anybody know when he's making his
I
pro
think
debut?
we had heard rumbles of maybe Bud's Creek. I don't know for sure. Like, don't hold me to that, but I think the rumbling was, at least I heard on the podium, Weezy might even be able to hear what the bikes and everything going on, but I thought he sits in about Davey Millsaps and Daisy Dukes at Bud's Creek, so
That's right. He did
keep
say
an eye
that.
out for that.
That's right. So that must mean he's racing.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about Mark Finnis. Maybe we see him. I'm trying to get
He's
some
racing
intel.
Bud's Creek. I just heard that. Finnis is in for Bud's.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're trying to get some intel. We haven't officially heard yet, but again, like you said, Bannock was racing a couple of these beforehand, and then I think the plan is for him to go full pro after this, basically, right?
Hey, it's Star Racing. There's always room. There's always room at the end.
Well, I had heard that Towers is probably going to not do the last three because he was coming off of injury. So even though he just won the 250 Pro Sport Moto, I don't think Towers is going to be doing any of the last three nationals.
Yeah,
but
and he tore his ACL last year doing the Ironman National.
Yeah, so I think he's going to wait it out a little bit. I heard that Baseflug was maybe going to do it, but maybe this week changed it. So maybe now he's not going to do it either because he had a pretty rough week at the ranch. Like it is up in the air. Maybe you guys know why is Bud's Creek the go-to and not start at Unadilla? Like, is there a reason why Bud's Creek is everyone jumping in? I don't know.
The hotter one, I don't know.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, because I was just listening to the fantasy pod, is a lot of people were saving riders for Buds because it's more like Florida dirt. That's so like if it's something where if they're training on Florida dirt and Buds has a more familiar, more familiar consistency, and that they feel better on that. But I don't know. That's just connecting dots that I kind of drew myself.
We'll find out on press day on Friday. So tune back in on Friday and we'll try and catch some of those guys. So
for sure. Anything else? Any big surprises? Let's just do that. What was your biggest surprise, each one of you, from the weekend? Any class, anything? Mitch, let's start with you. Watching from home.
Yeah, I think like Kellen mentioned, Gavin Towers. I think that was his first title at Loretta's. I know he won a moto last year, and that was a big one. And that was pretty cool being there. He's from Pittsburgh area, so PA boy representing. That was pretty cool. And then obviously, like you guys mentioned, Mark Finnis as well. You know, last year at the Redbud Moto Combine, he was jumping the Rocco's Leap, and then the pros weren't even jumping it the next day. So, like, we learned last year he wasn't afraid to send it. And like I said, we kind of bummed out at the finish there. He didn't leave with the title, but I think he turned a lot of heads. People that didn't know him, he was on their radar now. And people that knew of him kind of saw how fast he was and stuff. And then again, Parker Ross, due to, Ethan Mathis tweeted at me, huge amateur expert Mathis was like, I really don't know that name. And, he had a couple of good rides in Supercross features and amateur rounds and was kind of making his way into the top 10, top 5 there. And then, yeah, that week he had at the ranch, I think he posted on Instagram, his bike was feeling great. Everything was flowing. He had a great support from his team, his friends, everyone that, it's just awesome to see him riding really well. And again, he's one of those names that you don't necessarily, it's not a household name, but Loretta's put his name out there for sure. Like a lot of people are leaving thinking, okay, number 12 on the Honda, he was really fast. So I'd probably have to say those three guys are, maybe Mark we kind of expected and Gavin, but I think Parker was really the big takeaway for me just watching at home. Again, there was, especially in the top classes, Fapani and some of these guys in the 250B class and Cochrane knew these guys were going to be good, but I think Parker Ross for sure is like the big, takeaway for me.
Matt, who do you got?
Not that I want to say it's a big surprise. Gavin Towers. He's so good. and that's kind of my boy from back in the day staying at Grindstone. But I go with Gavin Towers just because how can you be consistent in conditions like that? And he had some incredible consistency that I don't understand how you could even do with, given the circumstances with the weather. So for me, it's Gavin Towers, and it's, as much as it's a surprise, I'm just proud of the guy for getting it done with consistency.
Yeah, Boom Air went 1:17.1 in the class that Towers won. I mean, that's why. I mean, Boom Air had a great race in the dry, a terrible race in the mud, and then a great race in the mud. So he proved he both can and can't ride mud. But there was
I think he got
towers,
stuck
like you
under his
said,
bike
just
at
being
one
the
point,
same
right?
in all three. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Beaumare got stuck under his bike at one point, which doesn't help. But
Yeah, but in that moto, he and Bennick started in the back, and Bennick worked his way through and was pulling away from him. It was not going to be a great moto regardless. And I'm like, well, I guess we know Beaumare's from Lake Havasu. He's not good in mud. And then the next day he crushed everybody in a mud race. So credit to Towers, like you said, Matt, for being the same each time.
Yeah,
that's the thing at home when you're watching and you just see the name drop on the lifetime of scoring, and I can't tell what happened until we get like a trackside update. That's what's tough about it. But yeah.
We just Beaumare yours, or do you have another one?
To me, the whole key at Loretta's these days is the B classes, because you don't know who's going to race pro sport. Like, Hayden Deegan could have raced Loretta's this year. Nick Romano could have raced it last year. These dudes, a lot of them just turned pro early. So B is kind of the last time they all race each other. So it looked to me like Cochran was going to be maybe the outstanding rider of the week. I mean, he crushed everybody, dominated the first moto, passed all his rivals in the second moto. You're like, oh, Cochran's going to win 5 or 6 motos. He's going to be the best B guy, and we're going to leave saying this is the next dude for sure. But then he dislocated his shoulder, so then I thought he was done. And then he actually came back to win one of the classes. He got 5th with a bad shoulder and then a 1st. He went 1-5-1 and still got a title. So where does that fall? It was like the surprise that he was winning, then the surprise that he wasn't, and then the surprise that he was. And that's really the key, because then we got in this numbers game where Cochran is great as a B rider, but apparently the same age as Deegan and Bennick. So is he doing awesome? Is this the right plan, like playing the long game? And he raced a 125 for a year and they didn't. So that's why he's 1 year behind them. Maybe playing the long game's better. Like, he'll build confidence instead of, Rider D is doing okay at the Nationals, but I'm sure he's not leaving the Nationals fist pumping saying, heck yeah, I went 8th this week, even though he should, but we know that's not how they work. So
yeah,
it'll be
Juju is
interesting
about
to see
the
in a
same
year or
age
two
as
how this
Casey as
turns out.
well.
What's that?
I was going to say Juju is about the same age as Casey as well, and look at they were in Supercross Futures together, and then now in different classes at Loretta. So like you said, there's kind of that different classes, different.
Yes, you'll have some people say Cochran's the same age and they're faster than him, but you'll have some people say, but this is Cochran's first year in a 250F and they've been racing it for a while, so he's actually doing really good. I don't know, but that's like the pressure point right now. I have a feeling you won't see Cochran, same thing at Loretta's next year. I bet she turns pro at round 1, a pro motocross, or maybe even races Supercross. But you really have to look at the B class to know who fits in where, because again, Deegan could be at Loretta's right now. He could have been. Think about that. He's that young. So once you get to pro sport, you don't know who's going to show up and who's going to turn pro. But I feel like Cochran was the best B guy overall, but he only has 1 title to show for it.
Gotcha. Kellen, let's close it off. Who was your biggest, or what was your biggest surprise of the weekend?
Well, I was going to dip into the B class like Weege as well, but I was actually going to go a different route. To me, I think Christian Janik surprised me in the way that he turned his week around, because the first motos were not good. Weege and I, we went down and talked to Ryan Holiday when it was raining, and Holiday said, yeah, they got to turn it around. And then Janik won 3 straight motos. It didn't end well, but he did end up winning the 250B title that Cochran did not get because he hurt his shoulder. Cochran won schoolboy. So to me, like, again, looking like Weege says, that B class is at that next group of riders. If you look at Team Green support right now, for example, they're all in the B class. That's all where they are. There's nobody that was a Team Green rider that ended up in the pro sport classes all week. So if you're looking at the next guys that need to fill that, like, log going on behind Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki, it is Janik. It is going to be then Drew Adams, who's younger than Christian Janik. And so I feel like we maybe don't talk that much about that group. But hey, a couple years from now, they're going to be trying to top 5, maybe win Supercross races. And you're going to be like, where'd they come from? We never saw them in open pro sport, but there they were, Janik winning a title in 250B.
Oh, that's that numbers game again, because Drew Adams didn't win a moto, and I think people were bagging on him. Hey, his own friends were bagging on him for not riding well. Didn't Dan Truman put out a Instagram post with him on a milk carton? Truman's like his buddy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, then they point out that Adams is 15 and Cochran 17. Again, so we play this age game. Does it matter? I don't know. Does it all come out the same in the end? Are the expectations too high? Are they right where they need to be? That's, I guess, kind of the puzzling thing about amateur racing. It's really always hard to nail it exactly.
Yeah, and if you locked them into their racing against their own age, you'd have the same problem being like, well, this guy's too good to be racing with these kids, blah, blah, blah. So, like, no matter how you split it, it's just, there is no good way to do it. But thank you guys.
Wait till they're all 21 and they're all in the 450 class in Supercross, and then
Yeah.
Then if you're Chase Sexton, you still got to race Eli Tomac.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true. Yeah, there's no way to win it. So hopefully we will see some of these guys this weekend, and it sounds like we're actually going to see a bunch of them at Buds next weekend. Mitch, Kellen, Matt, Jason, thank you for joining me for this edition of the RacerX Roundtable. Be sure to visit racerxonline.com for all of your motocross and supercross news.